Chefs Without Restaurants, episode 94 with Hungry founder, Eman Pahlavani.
The reason why I think, entrepreneurs are generally the ones who are successful. Why are they successful? It's mainly because they don't stop what they're doing. They just keep going. They keep going. Even if they keep hitting, one wall after another, they will keep pivoting and go, pivot and go. And the only way to really do that and stay motivated is if you have a co-founder who is constantly helping cheer you on. And then when he's down, you're up. When you're down, he's up. It helps make sure that you don't stop and that you do continue to move forward and pivot and move forward. At some point along that line of pivoting, what you offer will fit with what the market wants. And then that's when the business is really born and it starts to take off and it starts to grow. But to get there, there's a little bit of a grueling process of hitting lots of walls, having super sad days and nights where it doesn't work, tears, all that stuff. And a co-founder will help you get over these humps and these hurdles.
This is the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast with your host, Chris Spear. Each week, I'll be speaking with food entrepreneurs and people in the culinary industry. If you're interested in learning more about our organization dedicated to helping people build and grow their food businesses, look us up on the web at chefswithoutrestaurants.com and .org, and on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Chefs Without Restaurants. Now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. I'm your host, Chris Spear. On the show, I have conversations with culinary entrepreneurs and people in the food and beverage industry who took a different route. They're caterers, research chefs, personal chefs, cookbook authors, food truckers, farmers, cottage bakers, and all sorts of culinary renegades. I myself fall into the personal chef category, as I started my own personal chef business, Perfect Little Bites, 10 years ago. And while I started working in kitchens in the early 90s, I've literally never worked in a restaurant. This week, I have Eman Pahlavani. He's the founder and COO of HUNGRY, a digital platform that connects businesses with catering services provided by local chefs. The platform's notable investors include Jay-Z, Kevin Hart, and a number of NFL stars. This past year, they had to pivot a bit and began offering chef-made meals direct to consumers at their homes, as well as adding a virtual chef experience. Over the past few years, a lot of these platforms have been popping up, so I wanted to get more details directly from Eman. Honestly, I found that a lot of the platforms don't actually seem to be that beneficial to chefs, which is why I've been skeptical about having an organization like this on the podcast. But having done my research, it seems like HUNGRY really is a great option for chefs looking to expand their corporate catering business. That being said, I'm not a user of their service, and do your own research. This isn't a sponsored episode. I was just hoping to provide more value to my audience. On the show, we also talk about business basics and why Eman thinks it's imperative for a successful business to have a co-founder. I also want to let you know about something new I'm trying on the podcast. Some of the episodes are going to be called Meet a Member, where I highlight a member of the Chefs Without Restaurants community. Rather than a long-form interview, which I really do love, it'll be a shorter interview with a lot of fun, rapid-fire type questions thrown in. Almost like what I used to do at the end of the show when I started this podcast with Andrew. If you'd like to be featured, send me a message or an email. And now, on with the show. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great week. Hey, Eman, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you. I remember, I guess a couple of years ago when the article came out, and I think the headlines were like Jay-Z and Kevin Hart invests in chef platform or something. I think like everyone I know sent me those articles.
We were very blessed and lucky to have some amazing people join.
Yeah. Well, I've got a whole network of Chefs Without Restaurants, so this is kind of their thing. So I'm really looking forward to finding out about what you do. So I guess let's jump right in. You're the COO and founder of HUNGRY. So what's HUNGRY and how did that come about?
So HUNGRY's it's basically a food tech company that was created 2016, 2017. And the initial concept was to essentially connect local chefs that work out of incubator kitchens to companies who want corporate catering for breakfast, for lunch, for afternoon snacks. And the idea was that we would create that connectivity using a platform, a website, and launch this in every major market in the United States. So that was the original idea and concept. Basically, level the playing field for the independent chef.
So are people using your own kitchens, or can they use existing commercial kitchens that they've already been working out of if they have one?
Yeah, no. So Hungry doesn't own or operate any kitchens. Very much like Uber doesn't own the cars. So all of our chefs work out of incubator and commercial kitchens that they either were already working at or that they go and partner with. Hungry has a lot of great relationships with a lot of these kitchens because we're a huge source of revenue for the chefs that work there that then pay rent to those kitchens. But we actually don't own or operate any of them.
Do you have traditional caterers who are doing other things, like who maybe cater weddings and big events, but they also want to bring in some revenue doing corporate catering like this?
The way it starts is usually a chef, they would apply to be on the platform. If they got through the application process and the testing and everything, this would start off maybe as a side hustle for them, right? They do some catering on the Hungry platform, but then they have their own barbecue business or wedding business or whatever the case is. Within a few months, usually this becomes their full time because they're just so busy with the sheer volume of orders that comes in. So companies spend north of $50 billion a year on food to the office, and so most of that money is going to Panera Bread, your fast casual restaurants that they're ordering from. But Hungry is essentially rerouting all that and putting it in the pockets of all these chefs. And so once they join the platform, they get very, very busy.
That's really cool because I find as a personal chef, the hardest thing for me is the marketing and finding clients. And I know every caterer I know goes through the same thing. How do you get new clients? So it seems like you must be funneling a ton of business into all of these smaller caterers, which I think is great.
Yeah, the two common issues that we always hear with chefs is obviously getting business and getting reliable business, and then delivery. They don't like doing the delivery. That's not what they went to culinary school for, or that's not their passion. So Hungry takes kind of the business side of the house. Today you'll be cooking for Amazon, tomorrow Microsoft, the next day Facebook. So you don't really care like where it's going because you're just on the platform and you're getting orders every single day. And then Hungry's, we have a delivery fleet of over 300 people. They will come pick up the food. They put it in these sealed hot boxes that are designed for Hungry. They have the wire racks, the sternos, all the different parts and pieces. Then they go to the client site, for example, Microsoft's office. They set it up beautifully. The catering captain stays on site. They will help serve the food if necessary, and then they'll clean it up for free. So it's like a full service for the companies that don't want to get their hands, dirty with food and clean up and all that stuff. And it's full service for the chefs where all they want to do is just cook because that's their talent and that's what they love doing.
I love it. I used to work in catering and have had some nightmares with deliveries and stuff, and just not my jam. I was driving a truck one time and we had a chafing dish with food already ready to go in it, and someone cut us off and we jammed on the brakes and flipped a giant thing in the back of the truck, and the food went everywhere and we had to turn around and go back to the kitchen and just that kind of stuff. That's not what I want to do. And I think that's what so many of us chefs get into is you want to be a chef, you want to cook food, but so much of your day to day is taken up with doing all these mundane other little things that are best suited to someone else.
Yeah, that's it's not what, the key to this was how do you break up all the parts of a catering and have kind of someone take over each individual part and piece of it. So having someone own the marketing and the business acquisition part, like let's get an expert, let's get a salesperson for that. Having the chef do what they're an expert at, which is cooking delicious food on time, and then having a delivery person deliver it properly and clean it up. So we took the old traditional catering model and flipped it on its head, and it worked well for us. We grew very fast. We were in the DC area. In our first year, we did over $1 million in revenue. Investors came and said, let's take this and put this in other cities. Let's expand. Let's go. So right before the pandemic hit, we were in 7 cities across the country. We were, if I remember this correctly, clipping past a $20 million run rate. So there's a lot of, we were hiring, chefs were joining the platform. We started getting a lot of celebrity interest, and we were kind of in a nice up and to the right trajectory.
So what happened during the pandemic? I mean, how did you guys have to change?
So right before the pandemic, it's like 3 weeks before the US had its first case of COVID, we had just closed on a $20 million B round. So the company was valued at 100 and I want to say 15 or 20 million post money. We took in a good amount of capital, and the idea was that money would help fund Hungry's market expansion. We were going to go into 20 plus cities in 24 months. So it was an absolute blitz of the market because we thought, we felt like we had the special sauce and everything was working, clicking really well. Once COVID hit and people stopped going to the office, our revenue dried up completely within about 3 weeks. So it wasn't like a slow gradual, it was just a cliff. And we sat in a conference room and had to figure out, do we do what then, if you remember, seemed like a very popular move, which was basically furlough everyone and anyone. You'd hear it every Thursday on the jobs reports, right? Like another 1 million people furloughed, 2 million, 3 million. Or do you try and figure out how do you make the current crappy world that we live in work somehow? And we toyed around with every option. We decided let's hold the line and let's just give it a few months and see what's going to happen. Let's see if we can figure out a new way to survive, essentially. And that's how we had a couple new business lines that were born. We went from survival to thrival. Last year we clocked in 2 times our best revenue year ever, and the company is now just on this hiring spree right now. We're hiring quickly to expand into new markets and kind of turn the corner there nicely.
So are you seeing people coming back into office buildings right now?
So it is a market by market question, but generally, yes, across the country. As people get vaccinated, all the restrictions are getting loosened up, masks are coming off. And so people will be more and more comfortable as time passes. I believe the catalyst is going to be post-summer. So once everyone really goes on vacation, gets comfortable, you see all these people in restaurants and bars and you're everywhere you're going, no masks. Coming back to the office will probably be more normal. I don't think it's going to be full time. I think it'll be a hybrid model for maybe a year, but definitely people will be back in the office. We're already seeing it in the markets that we're in.
So as far as your chefs, do you see a typical demographic? Like, who are the chefs signing up for this?
So it's usually not your executive chef that's running a restaurant kitchen because they've got their hands full. They're working 100 hours a week. Actually, it could be your executive chef or sous chef that either owns their own catering company or has worked in the restaurant industry, doesn't like it for various reasons, hard hours, pay, whatever the reasons are, and they want to do their own thing. They have an entrepreneurial bug. They want to create their own barbecue company, catering company, and this platform is perfect for that. It's actually honestly perfect for any chef that is just great in the kitchen, because this platform, right before COVID, some of our chefs were doing $30,000 a month. That's 2 months of that is more than, most chefs in America see, on an annual basis. So it was doing, it was totally changing the game for chefs. And it was just, they make really good food and companies are spending lots of money, or they were spending lots of money on breakfast, lunches, and snacks in their office. And they were tired of, ordering Panera every single day or just sandwiches. So it is a platform that's really for all chefs. But typically what we see is initially it's I'll call it your mid-level to high-level chefs that come on is where most of the talent is right now.
So how does the pay work and all that? Are they just paying you a flat fee every month to kind of work with Hungry?
No, so chefs don't pay us anything out of their own pocket to be on the platform. So once they apply and then get accepted on the platform, and part of that process, it's a rigorous process of you actually have to cook your food for the Hungry team, because we are a company. So we're going to test it. We rate and review it. We give the chef feedback so they're able to make fixes and things or changes if they need to. We test them on being prompt, timeliness. There's a whole bunch of things that they're getting tested on there. But once they're on the platform, they are setting their own prices for their meals. We give them lots of guidance. Like, here's what the market, can take on a sandwich menu or on a chicken dish or on a pasta dish, whatever the case may be. And they set their own prices. And then Hungry, as a company, we mark it up to provide enough room for us to make money off of the transaction as well. That'll cover our delivery costs, our catering equipment and marketing and sales and all those different things. So the chef sets their own prices and keeps all of it.
I love that, because I think there's been so many of these platforms come out in the past couple of years, and so many of them seem kind of predatory to the chef. I think my biggest concern is like these chefs want to leave a restaurant to start their own business, and then they get on these platforms, and then they're essentially making, $15 an hour like they were making working in a restaurant. A lot of them lose their own branding. One of my concerns is I've looked at a couple of these, and I've been established for 10 years now, and they say, well, now you're Chef Chris at Hungry or, whatever company it is. You've lost all your branding, and now they're taking this huge cut and basically paying you, like 20% of all the food money you bring in. And that's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that I'd say that's probably one of the main reasons why we've had such an influx of, we've had over, thousands of chefs applied to be on this platform. So again, part of the flipping this industry on its head is also figuring out how do you incentivize and monetize the chef side in a way that works for everyone. So there isn't a lot of room in food, right? In the what people are willing to pay and the raw ingredients and the time that the chef, has to spend to make all the food, there's very small slices for, different parties to take. So what we typically do is our business targets companies that are subsidizing food fully, or partially, but typically it's fully, and they have decent budgets to do that. Lunch for $12 to $15 per person, and then we help the chefs get wholesale pricing on their ingredients, because usually an independent chef doesn't have a ton of buying power, but Hungry will back them, and we will help them get that from wherever they're sourcing their ingredients from. And then we make sure that the chef is happy with what they're receiving. This is worth their time. They're making really good money. They're profiting. They're successful. They can pay their rent to the kitchen that they're operating out of. And then Hungry will take its piece, which again helps just cover the costs of essentially running this enterprise business that has sales, marketing, delivery, all these different parts and pieces to make this thing grow. So, thankfully our chefs have generally across the board been very, very happy with, which is why they go full time on this. It's a reliable business. It's high income, and the hours are awesome. Our chefs work from, call it 6 to 7 a.m. till about 11:30, and they're done for the day, because it's a breakfast and lunch catering, which was where corporate America, typically caters to the office. So our chefs are done before noon. They can go home, get ready for the next day, hang with the family, do whatever they want to do. So it's no longer the days of the restaurant, keeping you till 2 a.m, especially on a weekend.
It's pretty sweet. I worked for a catering company that's what they did, was just corporate catering. The guys were big sports fans. They wanted to have season tickets to all the games. They didn't want to have to work on Saturdays or Sundays. They just wanted to go in and do breakfast, lunch, and call it a day.
If you're looking for like a better work-life balance, and most chefs don't have that. The industry doesn't allow for, right? We all go out to restaurants during dinner. And then after dinner's over at 8, 9, there's like 3 hours of cleanup that has to happen. And just there's so much, especially on the weekends. So, delivery, the amount of income they make, the work-life balance, like these are all things that make this very attractive for chefs. And ultimately, we want this to be the platform where a chef graduates from culinary school, and then they don't have to go to a restaurant if they don't. This is another alternative. They can join the Hungry platform, pay $500 to $1,000 a month rent at one of these commercial kitchens, and that's basically all the risk that they take on.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is Chefs Without Restaurants. My whole community are people who don't want to work in restaurants. I mean, I've been in food since 1992, and I've literally never worked in a restaurant. And people always say, like, how's that possible? Well, I worked in corporate catering. I worked for IKEA. I've worked in R&D kitchens. I worked for Sodexo. Like, I just never wanted to work till like 2 a.m, 80 hours a week.
I think most chefs don't want to do that. They want to be their own boss to a certain degree. They want to make the food that they're passionate about. They don't want to go into a restaurant and make, the restaurant owner's menu. The problem just is that a lot of the chefs are, there's a business side that you've got to bring to the table. That's hard. It's complicated, especially in that world. There's a delivery side that's even more complicated and even more messy. Finance side. There's just all these different parts and pieces that they don't really teach us in culinary school to the degree that we would need to be able to branch out on our own. And for those chefs that are thinking like, well, let me open up a restaurant, that's $1 million investment minimum, with 80% failure rate in the first few years. not something awesome to look forward to. And you're just trying to create an alternative for them. Like hard workers, they make food that everybody consumes and eats and enjoys. So, I think it's time that, the industry focuses on the chefs and figure out, well, how do we make this work for them?
I and many of my personal chef colleagues have focused on the high end stuff. You've got to trade on volume a lot if you're doing $12 meals. I would rather do 10 meals at $100 a head than 100 meals at $10 a head. Have you ever thought about doing anything like that, kind of working on a higher end with a more intimate chef experience?
So we started doing that before COVID, just because the CEO of X company who had Hungry in their office now wants a private dinner party, or for a kid's birthday or for whatever the case may be. That business is chefs love that business because it's fewer. You can spend more time on it. Doesn't mean it's easier. It's just there's just certain things that makes it more lucrative and better. But the problem is, the reason why we don't go all in on that is the concept behind the Hungry platform is to level the playing field for all chefs. There's just not enough, I'll call it elite business, $100 per person meal business to cover all the chefs out there that want to be a part of the platform. So you create a platform that captures, pretty much all of the corporate catering business. And then there's offshoots of that where they want higher end this, higher end that the chefs can knock out as well.
I guess for me, that was my way of running a restaurant without having to run a restaurant, because I really wanted to get into that intricate stuff. But I mean, there are so many people out there doing the corporate catering that this really makes sense for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, we had we still have a chef on our platform. She's Filipino. She came to this country, used to work in the airport at a restaurant, just as a line cook, making, sandwiches and burgers and just American food. She joined our platform as a total, side business. She's been with us now for 2+ years. She makes $40,000 a month because people love her authentic Filipino food. She's like a favorite by companies, and she's told us, I've never made this much money in my entire life. Total economic freedom. She obviously doesn't work at the airport anymore. And her prices, she's doing $10 to $12 lunches per person, but she's pulling in, over $15,000, $20,000 a month in net profit. So there's, you can get the high end business and make what you need to. And that's a very lucrative and interesting business there. And then there's I'll call it the mid-level, where it's more volume, to your point. But there's just so much of it these days, because there's so many companies that are spending on food to keep their employees happy, to keep them motivated. And, my generation doesn't want to have Panera bread every day. They're very smart about what food they eat. And you can't get that if you just go online and you're looking at the different local restaurants.
My only thing with the volume is then you also have to employ people, because it's near impossible to do that kind of volume. And then you're back into being an employer and all the things that come along with being an employer. And I think a lot of us get into this business so we don't have to be employers anymore.
Yeah. So the most I've seen is they will be, the person who's on the platform will have could have a team of 1 to 3 people, washers, cutters, and they all work in the incubator kitchen together as a team. So I've seen that. I'd say probably 60 to 70% of our chefs are, one person shows, but then there's a, 20, 25% that have a small team of 1 or 2 or 3 people, just because they do produce a higher volume.
I would have thought that you'd have more people with a team. That's good to know that it's still like 60 to 70% are doing it solo.
Yeah, no, they are. They're the average, on our platform was closer to 10,000 a month. It was like 8 to 10,000 a month. And that's much more manageable for one person, depending on what the order is. They might be cooking every day, a couple times a day. They might be cooking twice a week because it's bigger volume. So it just depends on what these orders are. And, in New York, we launched in New York and Boston, Atlanta, DC, Philadelphia, and Austin, and Dallas. And, these are all markets where food to the office, all the markets in the US really pre-COVID, food to the office was just the norm. So we would strategically go after the ones that are very dense, lots of foods going into the offices, and we knew we would be able to capture that audience.
So do you have any big new things on the horizon you're working on?
During COVID, we launched Hungry Virtual Experiences, which was putting our chefs on Zoom and having them teach Microsoft, Google's, these companies how to cook a dish for 1 hour. And that was the company's way of keeping their employees engaged on a Zoom and having fun. But we would also send kits of food and cutting boards and knives and different parts and pieces for that experience. That business rocketed to the moon very, very quickly. We went from zero to over $1 million a month in just a couple months. It was incredible growth. So we are growing that business and expanding it. Even though people will come back to the office, there's going to be still a big portion of the market that stays virtual. And so they will always want to be involved in the team activities. So what we're doing is creating these hybrid experiences where you can be at home, you can be, in California, in Texas, in the office, and everyone can engage in the experience, whether you're live or whether you're on Zoom, with these very well-designed kits that we send people and a really talented, chef. Most of our chefs are celebrity chefs or TV chefs, so they put on a really good show.
So many people have great ideas, but they can't execute. You've started really successful businesses. Is there a trick? Like, what do you attribute your success to?
If you are starting a business, my first suggestion is something that my brother, who is my co-founder in these companies, taught me, which is find a co-founder. The reason for that is the next point, which is don't stop. The reason why I think entrepreneurs are generally the ones who are successful. Why are they successful? It's mainly because they don't stop what they're doing. They just keep going. They keep going, even if they keep hitting one wall after another. They will keep pivoting and go, pivot and go. And the only way to really do that and stay motivated is if you have a co-founder who is constantly helping cheer you on. And then when he's down, you're up. When you're down, he's up. It helps make sure that you don't stop and that you do continue to move forward and pivot and move forward. At some point along that line of pivoting, what you offer will fit with what the market wants. And then that's when the business is really born and it starts to take off and it starts to grow. But to get there, there's a little bit of a grueling process of hitting lots of walls, having super sad days and nights where it doesn't work, tears, all that stuff. And a co-founder will help you get over these humps and these hurdles. If you're alone, it's really, really hard to do that. It's very easy to say, oh my God, this isn't going to work. I'm done. I'm going to go back to a 9 to 5.
But it's also hard to find a co-founder as someone who's, I don't know, I've tried to bring a couple people in with me and you think you have the right fit and then you don't have the right fit and then you feel like you're starting from scratch again. I think, personally, I've gotten a little gun shy. You bring someone on, you bring them into the inner circle, you try them out, you work together for a year or so, and then it's like they're not the right fit. And then it feels like starting from scratch again.
Yeah, finding there's probably, books that are written on how to even find just a good co-founder. One of the reasons why my co-founder is my brother is because there's a level of trust that is inherently there. You just know the person's DNA, you know what they're thinking, how they think, what you can rely on them for. So, finding a co-founder that you've never met before is not probably ideal. You definitely want to look within your own network, who's like-minded, who has the same energy, and who's very, very trustworthy, and who wants to be an entrepreneur as well. And usually people find those folks in college, at some point along their educational career, or at their first job together, they came up with an idea. But yeah, it's not easy to find that right co-founder.
Well, besides your brother, who do you really admire? It could be someone in business, someone in the food world, or just someone personally.
I'd honestly probably say my dad, because he's a person who came to this country, overseas 30 years ago, couldn't speak English, worked the McDonald's, all those jobs and trying to figure out how to make it work. But he was very entrepreneurial, started his own company, a construction company, then a home building company, and it was success after success. And kind of watching that as I was younger, just the sheer hustle that a human being can have to just not stop and just keep going and keep going. I think that helped teach me. I went to law school. I was supposed to be a lawyer. And I think it showed me this is a much more exciting path. This is a much more rewarding path to be able to employ people and hire people and grow businesses. So, I'd probably answer that question and say my dad.
It's inspiring to see someone in your family specifically kind of lead the way like that. My dad didn't start his own business, but he worked at the same company for 40 years, I guess, for better or for worse. I saw a lot of good things, but a lot of that also pushed me to not want to work for the same company for 40 years and to kind of go out and start my own thing.
Yeah, I think what your parents do very much shapes, how you end up, turning out essentially, whether you do what they do or whether you go in the totally opposite direction. My brother was an entrepreneur after he got out of James Madison University undergrad, and kind of watched him. Then I wanted to do that. And then now his success, my success. And then now my sister, who's now in the working world, has started her own, company as well. So kind of everyone's kind of following in those footsteps. And I try and meet with a lot of friends who do work at other companies, and it's like a mission of mine to pull them out and have them do what they want to do, which is, they all have got an idea and a concept and something that they're more passionate about. It's just about taking on the risk and being okay with, being comfortable with, the level of risk that entails.
And I think surrounding yourself with people who are supportive. I mean, there's caution, but I know when I went to start my own business, there was a lot of people who are very comfortable in their jobs and they didn't understand. I was at a job that I had been at for 10 years with all the benefits and bells and whistles, and they just couldn't conceive of me starting from zero, in their opinion. And a lot of them weren't supportive, but a lot of them were. And I think also surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, I'll say it's probably not for everyone. It is, at certain times gut wrenching. It is very difficult. It's not easy in the first year or so, but the big but is if you are successful, if you do make it through that, there's really no cap or no ceiling on what you're able to accomplish. Having the right people around you, as you're doing that is important. Talking to other founders and entrepreneurs who are doing it successfully, creating that friend group is important. Just, you're going to learn a lot from them. And it also just, the main piece of this is like, can you stay motivated through the tough times? I think, personally, I believe most businesses fail, not because the idea is bad, not even because the execution is bad. It's because at some point they got demotivated and just stopped, and rather than trying to innovate and fix and continue.
And if anything, this past year has shown everyone you have to either adapt or you don't. And then
I think that this generation of entrepreneurs will be incredible. Over the next few years, you will see lots of incredible companies being born. This generation that went through COVID and was forced to figure out how to do things differently, they're going to be natural entrepreneurs and natural pivoters and natural innovators. And so what we should see out of this very, again, crappy time is, on the other side, a lot of, amazing businesses that are going to, help people in general, live better lives and do better things.
So is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we get out of here today?
For the folks who are in the culinary industry and you are thinking about, how do you start your own business and all the things that come with it, best advice is take that leap, try it. The risk it's risky for everyone, but very rewarding if you keep on going at it. If you find platforms like Hungry and others that help kind of ease you into it, even better. But there's a lot of amazing tools out there that can make an entrepreneur successful. And there's lots of innovating that needs to happen in the culinary world. It just needs some really great people to make it happen.
Again, this past year, we've seen a lot of changes that COVID and just the state of things in the world have kind of sped up some of the changes that I think need to happen in the restaurant industry. So I'm optimistic for the future there.
Yep. Yeah, same. I think we're going to see some amazing things over the next few years.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you. If any chefs want to start working with Hungry, what's the best way for them to start?
If they visit our website, hungry.com, they can apply to be a chef right there. And, we have a whole chef network team. They'll get back to them quickly. They'll talk to them and they'll put them, have them, apply and go through our process. And then hopefully they'll be on the platform.
It sounds great. And I really hope some of our chefs reach out and can start growing their business even more.
Very cool. I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. And to all of our Chefs Without Restaurants listeners, this has been Chris with the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. As always, you can find us at chefswithoutrestaurants.com.org and on all social media platforms. Thanks so much and have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show or sponsoring a show, please let us know. We can be reached at chefswithoutrestaurants@gmail.com. Thanks so much.